When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Eagles fans, welcome back to another edition, a special edition, a Sunday Fun Day edition of Football 24/7. And I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II, and I'm joined by none other than our Philadelphia Eagles insider, John McMullen, the Don Dada, one of the best guys covering the Philadelphia Eagles right now, in my humble opinion. One of the most objective, one of the most honest, and he gives you the raw details, straight no chaser. So, John, first and foremost, man, I appreciate you for always taking time for me, man. It's Sunday. I've never called on you for a Sunday show. So, again, I appreciate you for taking the time. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. We appreciate all the love and support you guys provide, especially on a Sunday. It's the off week for the Super Bowl. So we're going to take some time here to really talk about what's going on with your Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of changes, obviously coaching changes, but John and I are going to get right into that. John, my friend, how are you feeling this afternoon, this sunny afternoon in Philadelphia? How are you feeling?
Yeah, sun's out, first time in a while, so that's a positive locally for the people that are local. Yeah, I'm usually busy on Sundays, so a little bit different.
What do you normally do with your Sundays now that the season is kind of, past us? And
a lot of honey-do list stuff. A lot of got to get stuff done, man.
Yeah, I feel you on that. It's funny. Earlier today, around the time when I text you, me and the wife were literally in the midst of setting up our book club meeting. So that's how the honey-do list. You're tied up, and especially on a Sunday. Man. I totally understand what you mean by that. But let's get into it. Doug Nussmeier is the Eagles' new quarterback coach. You kind of called this last week.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty easy one. So I'm not going to spike the football on that one. Anybody who knows Kellen Moore, they've been together since 2018. Really, Kellen's first year as a assistant coach in Dallas. He was the quarterback's coach. I believe Doug was the tight ends coach. And then Kellen got the offensive coordinator job the next year. And John Kitna was the quarterback coach. So it wasn't right away. But then the next season, so 2020, it was Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier, and it's been that way ever since, both in Dallas and last year with the Chargers. So it was sort of a well-known secret around the league that Doug would be getting the job if, and that was the hang-up, he was under contract to the Chargers, much like Kellen Moore was. But you got to be let out. You can't leave for a lateral move. In the case of the Chargers, like a lot of teams do, when you have guys under contract, you wait until the new guy's in place. In this case, it was Jim Harbaugh. And obviously Jim wants to go with his guys and his assistant coaches. So once he became available, that was that. And yeah, they'll be together in that situation for the fifth consecutive year, seventh year total. but the 5th consecutive year as offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach with Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier.
Yeah, you know, Doug's experience is quite extensive. More than 20 years of coaching quarterbacks. He started out in 2001. He was the BC Lions quarterback coach, 2002, the Ottawa Redblacks quarterbacks coach, 2003 to 05, Michigan State quarterbacks coach, 06 to 07, St. Louis Rams quarterbacks coach, 08, Fresno State OC and quarterbacks coach, 2000 to 2011, spent time at Washington. As the OC and the QB coach there, 2012 to 2013, the Alabama OC and QB coach, 2014, Michigan OC quarterbacks coach, 2015 to 2017, Florida OC and QB coach. Then we bring up the Dallas Cowboys, that one stint as the tight ends coach, and then he got back to coaching his quarterbacks, and then in LA. So this guy brings in 20 plus years of handling quarterbacks. You know, with that kind of experience, there's probably no quarterback style you haven't coached. And, you know, with all this experience coming in, obviously Fangio with his experience, Kellen Moore, young, but still has a solid foundation of experience calling plays and has had success. And then you bring in Doug Nussmeier, 20 plus years of coaching quarterbacks. They're bringing a lot of experience in this season. What took them so long? Why all of us why not this approach last season?
Pendulum theory, my friend. I mean, it happens everywhere in the NFL. When something doesn't work, you go to the other end of the spectrum. So it's entirely predictable. Last year, they won first-time coordinator Brian Johnson, Alex Tanney, who interestingly, you know, he's basically 3 years off the field as a player, first chance as a position coach. And that didn't work. So what do? You go towards experience. You know, it's entirely predictable for the Eagles. Like, look, you know, Doug's a very good coach. He's coached Dak Prescott. He's coached Justin Herbert in recent seasons. But let's be honest, if it were as simple as just hiring the most experienced guy, it'd be pretty easy, right? To do these types of things. So, you know, if you go back to 2021, you know, one of the main criticisms of Nick Serianni and his staff, his first staff, was where's the experience? They did pretty well. So no guarantee. But it's predictable. That's what happens. It's when, you know, the pendulum goes back and forth. And when one thing doesn't work, you go the opposite direction. Now you have Vic Fangio, Doug Nussmeier, even Kellen Moore, very young guy, but 6 years as an offensive coordinator. You know, if you think about, you know, he came in, Kellen Moore, I'm talking about, right off the field as the quarterbacks coach. He didn't even have, like, the Eagles did it with Alex Tanney, but they made him a quality control coach, then an assistant quarterbacks coach, then the position coach first time last year. The Cowboys right away made Kellen Moore the quarterbacks coach, and it worked out pretty well for him. By the next year, was the offensive coordinator. He's been an offensive coordinator since for some of the best offenses in the NFL. Now the Eagles think he's a savior. If he were with the Eagles, he probably would have got blown out after year one. So
It's entirely possible.
yeah. So depends how you look at these things.
Yeah, and you know, it kind of speaks to how people view Kellen Moore around the NFL. I mean, for a guy like Doug Nussmeier to have this much experience all around the college game, the NFL game, he's been through it all for the most part. It speaks to the respect Kellen Moore has sort of earned for himself. You know, you said it yourself. You know, first opportunity, he got a quarterback's coach job. So speak on just that dynamic between that may exist between a guy like Doug Nussmeier and Kellen Moore, and how they've been able to coexist for so many years.
Well, obviously they get along, so that's part of it. And that's the major part of it. But yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, they have a lot in common. Doug was for those who don't remember, and it's been a while, he was a great college quarterback as well at Idaho. He was a third, fourth round pick. I forget what he was, but he he was, he won the Walter Payton Award, which is basically the Division 1AA. It was back then. Now it's FCS. I got them mixed up, but that's the Player of the Year, basically the Heisman at that level. So he won the Walter Payton Award. Kellen Moore was a great quarterback at Boise State. He set the record, by the way, Kellen Moore, for most college wins by a quarterback. It was like 50-3 or something
Wow.
ridiculous at the college level. So they have that in common. They were both great college quarterbacks, both backup quarterbacks at the NFL level for about the same period of time. And so they have a lot in common from that perspective. And yeah, I mean, sometimes it just works out. Doug has a ton, as you mentioned, of experience as a coordinator as well in college and for some pretty big programs. When you talk about Washington and Alabama and Michigan and Florida, pretty big time programs before he came back to the NFL. And sometimes there's more to being a coordinator than being a position coach. And some people are good at it. Some people aren't. There's more to being a head coach than being a coordinator. Same thing. A lot more as you go up that chain, you have a lot more responsibilities. And sometimes they don't even deal with football when you're the head coach. So there's more to it than just, the best scheme and the best teaching ability and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because, earlier you said it. No, it doesn't matter. Like, you hire a young guy, you hire a guy with experience. The first year, the Eagles got crap for having an inexperienced staff, and then they got another year at it, and all of a sudden they're in the Super Bowl. And then you have some situations where experienced staffs don't really work out. And the bottom line is it's not really an exact science, no matter how you slice it. But in a vacuum, one can argue that this organization, they're not playing around with their French, with their investment in Jalen Hurts. They're trying to put the best people around him to get him to where he needs to go.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. But remember, Brian Johnson was around him when he was playing at an MVP level.
That's true.
Runner up to the MVP. So he was, working with him the most on a day-to-day basis. And then obviously Shane was the offensive coordinator. So in this setup, Doug Nussmeier is going to be the guy working with Jalen the most on a day-to-day basis. And then you go up the layers with Kellen Moore. Yeah, it's to be determined. But I know everybody's going to say, Brian did a bad job and Alex did a bad job. But, Brian was the guy who worked with him the most when he turned into what he turned into. So there's a lot of holes in that type of thinking if you want to create scapegoats, but it's just a natural evolution of the NFL. And it's about that pendulum. When something doesn't work, you blame somebody and you swing the other direction. Everybody does it. The Eagles are no different. I kind of hold the Eagles up to a higher standard, though, because they like to think of themselves as a forward-thinking organization. And for the most part, they are. But when it comes to coaches, they're not. They're like everybody else. Same reactionary. Oh, this didn't work. Let's go the opposite direction. Doug doesn't work. They'll go back to the young guy. They'll go back to, something else. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. People put too much into coaching anyway.
Yeah. I know you're real big on that. So
and by that, I don't mean they're not important, but the way they're important is teaching and behind the scenes stuff. And I think, a lot of fans think they're playing video games. And if they just put the players in the proper spot, that they're going to be successful. And if the players aren't successful, it's because of the coaches. It's really because of the players. The coaches are successful.
Just as much as their moves are indicating that they have a high investment in Jalen Hurts' success, surrounding Nick Serianni with all these experienced guys, it seems like they're doing their best to try to give Nick Serianni a fair shot at, making this thing work.
Yeah. They're not giving Nick Serianni a fair shot.
Okay. Break that down for me, because I kind of set that up for you.
There's no stinking way. I don't care what anybody thinks. If they're giving him a fair shot, you say, oh, guess what? We had a really bad end of the season. Let's turn it around. Rah, rah. Go get him, Nick. We know you're a great coach. That's a fair shot. You get to make your own decisions. That's a fair shot. Now, I'm not going to say it's the worst thing in the world to get paid $7 million and be ordered to do something. There's a lot worse lots in life. So I'm not going to say feel sorry for Nick Serianni. But no, when somebody says they're giving him a fair shot, by no means are they giving him a fair shot. They put handcuffs on him. Now, maybe it works because maybe Nick's not good enough and maybe he needs handcuffs. If you want to argue that, I'll listen to that. But if you believe in Nick Serianni, no, they're not giving him a fair shot.
Wow, Nick Serianni, he's been through the ringer these past few months with this team, and it makes you think. Last year, did he have more control of the way his staff will be constructed? And this year, clearly, they're looking at it like, nah, we're kind of taking that away from you.
Yeah, does anybody question that at this point? I mean, are there still people out there who believe Nick is in control of this staff? I can't help those people. I mean, it's a guy who said, this is my offense. As long as I'm here, this is my offense. I don't care if it's Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, Howie Roseman, Dom DeSandro, Tone, DeShields, John McMullen. I don't care. It's my offense. As long as I'm here, it's my offense. Now it's not his offense. Did he just wake up one day and say, oh, guess what? My offense stinks? Yeah, that guy's the most competitive guy in the world. That guy's got more self-confidence than anybody on the planet. Maybe it's not even deserved. But there's no freaking way he woke up one day and said, oh, I need some help from Kellen Moore to put together an NFL offense. After the success he had, no stinking way. This comes from one man, and that's Jeffrey Lurie.
So let's kind of put ourselves in Nick Serianni's shoes here, right? If you were Nick Serianni, what would be the thoughts that would be going through your mind, especially over how things transpired these past few months, and then with the hires and the stripping of power? If you were in Nick Serianni's shoes, how would you navigate this, just from a professional standpoint?
Well, from a professional standpoint, you want to be a professional and you want to do everything to help this team win, and that's good for him as well. But from a standpoint, also, when the lights go out at night and he's by himself, which is not often because he's obviously got 3 kids. But when he has those moments to himself, I'm sure he's thinking about the next chapter and where the next chapter is going to be. That's what I'd be doing. And the more success you have, the easier it is to get that second landing spot. But the Eagles have, and I shouldn't say the Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie has foreshadowed his beliefs in Nick Serianni and where they are currently, and that's not much,
That's a good point, because at the end of the day, they can say what they want. Your actions are indicating that you don't trust this man to get this team back on track. Is that fair? Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
fair to surmise?
Exactly. It completely fair. Which is why, again, Jeffrey can do whatever he wants. It's his team. And I believe it. All right, if you don't believe in the head coach, fire him and move on and get somebody you believe in. Could this work? Anything could work. Will it work? I doubt it, but and then what's the definition of works? Winning the Super Bowl, making the Super Bowl, making the playoffs. They could certainly make the playoffs. and where are we with Kellen Moore? You're going to have this, and Detroit is going through this at least a little bit right now because there are people there who, are looking at Dan Campbell and making fourth down decisions that he did all year, and they don't work out because people drop the football, and Jared Goff doesn't get the ball to the right receiver, and all of a sudden they're saying, well, Ben Johnson should be the head coach. If the Eagles turn this thing around and Jalen Hurts is MVP candidate again, are people going to say, well, Kellen Moore did that? Kellen Moore should be the head coach. Probably. So even in a positive fashion, on the field, you're going to have these issues moving forward because of the way they set this up. Now, defensively, I mean, it's a little bit different because Nick would have hired Vic Fangio. So I don't think he has a problem with that part of it. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But I know how loyal he is to his guys, and one of them, DK McDonald, is gone.
Perfect segue, John. Perfect segue. DK, he's taking a job apparently with the Kansas Jayhawks as their new co-defensive coordinator and DB's coach. And like you said, Nick Serianni he would love to ride for his guys when possible. It's fascinating. I had no idea DK and Nick's relationship really was this entrenched. I mean, McDonald was a groomsman in Serianni's wedding.
Yeah. They go back all the way back to IUP. Early in Nick's coaching career, was a groomsman, as you mentioned, at his wedding. Now, I'll also say, if you go all the way back to 2021, DK McDonald was at Iowa State, so Nick's very close to Matt Campbell, the Iowa State coach. But the Eagles had hired somebody by the name of Jay Valai to be the assistant DB's coach.
Yes, I remember him. Wasn't he with was it Georgia or Alabama? He's one of those big programs, wasn't he?
Well,
or he took
left.
a job.
He left to go to Alabama.
Right.
He was here for 12 days, I believe.
Right.
And Alabama came calling with a better job. And he left. And then he went and basically didn't have anybody, and he went to his friend, DK. And then ultimately, obviously, Denard Wilson left, and DK got promoted. Now he's out. So, there's some give and take there, and certainly the secondary didn't perform well. Joe Casper's coming back to be the safeties coach. Now, he was here as a quality control coach under Nick in 21 and 22, and then he went down to Miami to be the safeties coach under Vic Fangio. So he's got some experience here, knows Nick well, so that's probably not necessarily a bad thing. And then as a whole, Vic Fangio set up his coaching staff a little bit differently in Miami than they had here. He had a passing game coordinator and secondary coach, which was the lead guy, and that was Ronaldo Hill. He had a cornerbacks and pass game specialist, which was Sam Madison, and the safeties coach was Joe Casper. And Joe is already coming back, so that's as the safeties coach. So that is an indication he's going to set up the staff in a similar fashion. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ronaldo Hill is in that same role here, because Miami just hired a new defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver. He's probably going to go in a different direction. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some more of those Miami guys coming with Vic Fangio to Philadelphia.
John, final question before we get out of here. You guys, we're definitely going to keep this show short. Again, it's Sunday Fun Day, so the last thing I want to do is monopolize John's Sunday. Him and I, I'm sure, both have a lot to get done, but we appreciate you guys for locking on the content. John, final question here. With all this coaching turnover, right, you're getting rid of guys that players, kind of, took a liking to. The players like DK, they like Denard, when he was here. Players like Brian Johnson, even AJ Brown said, hey, somebody got to be the bad guy. So How do you think all this coaching turnover, especially how it affects Nick Serianni, how do you think, this is going over with the players if you had to make a guesstimation?
I don't think it's as big as a deal with the players because the players are used to it. AJ, as you mentioned, kind of said it when he was talking about Brian, and he basically said, my job doesn't change, so he doesn't pay all that much attention to the offensive coordinator. So I don't think it matters as much to the players, believe it or not, as the coaches themselves and their relationship together as a group. The players, they got to play. So from their perspective, they look at coaches as, can you help me? And they respect guys who help them. And again, that's a sliding scale. If you're AJ Brown, can you make AJ Brown a little bit better than what AJ was before? Then he's going to have a ton of respect for you. If you can't help him, probably won't have much respect for you. Same thing with every player. Can you make that particular player a little bit better?
And that's what it's going to come down to, especially for a guy like Jalen Hurts. Can Doug Nussmeier make Jalen Hurts a little bit better? Can he shift the pendulum as we've been using all show? Can he shift the pendulum for Jalen Hurts and his career, especially coming off of a down season with the turnovers and such? But again, they're surrounding Jalen Hurts with a ton of experience. Although this doesn't really bode well for Nick Sirianni's future, I would hope that these hires could bode well for Jalen Hurts' future. That's the hope. But again, Eagles fans, we appreciate you guys so much for locking on the content. John, any final words before we get out of here?
No, just obviously we're heading towards free agency and the draft, and this team is always interesting the way they handle stuff. But the coaching staff had to be number one. And it looks like Jeff Stoutland, Jeff is going to be back. So you're going to have certain guys. It's going to be interesting. Jamal Singleton as the assistant head coach. Could he be back? Perhaps. A couple other guys. Jeremiah Washburn's an interesting one to keep an eye on because he's sort of got a dual background. He was in the scouting department as well, so that might help him. But significant turnover on the staff. So, when you look back at last season, pretty clearly they're saying the reason we didn't reach our expectations are because of the coaching staff. Is that fair or not? Everybody can decide that on their own. I believe the personnel was a bigger issue than the coaching staff.
There you have it, Eagles fans. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys locking in for us for as long as you did. We kept you guys captive for about 29 minutes on your Sunday. We couldn't be more happier to have you guys here with us. So again, smash that like button. Make sure you guys also check John out on si.com and jakibsports.com. He does an amazing job covering the Philadelphia Eagles, gives you some of the best information, some of the best insight as the Eagles insider, not just for si.com, but also for JAKIB Sports. And also make sure you guys check them out on Birds 365 tomorrow and for the rest of the week, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern time to 10 a.m. Eastern time. Again, John and his partner in crime, Jody McDonald, do an amazing job covering your Philadelphia Eagles, giving you the most objective and the most passionate insights that you can find here in the Philadelphia sports market. We'll leave you guys to it. Smash that like button. You guys were locked in on Football 24/7 with John McMullen, and I've been your host, Tone DeShields II, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messon Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa